Not every American weapon was a success. Some failed in the heat of battle. Some jammed when soldiers needed them most. And some are so dangerous or unreliable, they quietly disappeared from history. These are the U.S. weapons that failed in real combat. M14 rifle. The M14 was meant to be the perfect all-in-one rifle, replacing every U.S. infantry weapon at once. But in Vietnam's jungles, it quickly became a liability. The rifle was long, heavy, and nearly uncontrollable on full auto. In close combat, soldiers struggled to move and fight effectively. And within just a few years, the M14 was pushed aside for a lighter replacement. Early M16. When the M16 arrived in Vietnam, it promised modern firepower and lighter weight. Instead, it became infamous for jamming in the middle of firefights. Soldiers were falsely told the rifle didn't need cleaning, while poor ammunition and unlined barrels made things worse. Men were found dead beside jammed rifles, forcing the U.S. Army to rush emergency fixes. M3 grease gun. The M3 was cheap, simple, and easy to mass-produce, but combat exposed its weaknesses fast. It jammed easily in mud, sand, and cold conditions. Its awkward handling and slow rate of fire frustrated troops, and many soldiers quietly preferred enemy weapons over their own issued submachine gun. Peterson device. The Peterson device was a secret American attempt to give soldiers instant automatic fire. In theory, it was brilliant. In reality, it was fragile, complex, and required special ammunition that never reached the front in time. The war ended before it could be used effectively, turning a massive investment into a historical footnote. Early bazooka. The first bazookas shocked Axis forces when they appeared, but the surprise didn't last long. As German tank armor improved, early bazookas struggled to penetrate their targets. Direct hits often failed to disable enemy vehicles, forcing U.S. troops dangerously close to tanks until better version. M47 Dragon missile. The Dragon missile looked advanced on paper, but soldiers hated using it. The missile traveled slowly, forcing the operator to stay exposed while guiding it toward the target. Accuracy was unreliable, and malfunctions were common. When the system was finally retired, many troops were relieved to see it go. Davy Crockett nuclear weapon. The Davy Crockett was one of the most dangerous ideas ever put into service. It fired a nuclear warhead with such a short range that crews risked being caught in the blast themselves. While technically functional, it was completely impractical for real combat and quietly removed before it could ever be used. F-111 Aardvark. The F-111 entered the Vietnam War before it was fully ready. Almost immediately, serious design flaws led to multiple crashes. The losses were so severe that the aircraft was pulled from combat entirely. Only years later, after extensive redesigns, did the F-111 finally become a reliable strike aircraft. F-4 Phantom II. When the F-4 Phantom entered Vietnam, it carried advanced missiles but no internal gun. Military planners believed dogfights were obsolete. Combat quickly proved them wrong. Missile failures and close-range engagements exposed the flaw, forcing the U.S. to reintroduce guns on later versions of the aircraft. AGM-12 Bullpup Missile. The Bullpup missile required pilots to manually guide it all the way to the target. That meant flying straight toward enemy defenses under heavy fire. Accuracy suffered badly, and pilot losses increased. The missile worked, but the cost and risk made it an unsustainable weapon. Mark 14 Torpedo. The Mark 14 torpedo remains one of the worst weapon failures in U.S. history. It ran too deep, failed to explode, or detonated before reaching the target. Submarine crews reported perfect hits that did absolutely nothing. It took over a year of combat losses before the Navy finally admitted the torpedo was flawed. Littoral Combat Ship Weapon Systems. The Littoral Combat Ship was designed for modern coastal warfare, but its weapon systems repeatedly failed during deployments. Mechanical problems and maintenance issues crippled its combat effectiveness. Eventually, the Navy acknowledged major design mistakes and scaled back its role. SBIW Program Weapons. The SBIW program aimed to completely reinvent infantry combat. Instead, it produced weapons that were heavy, complicated, and unreliable. None of the designs met battlefield needs, and after years of failed testing, the entire program collapsed without ever producing a usable weapon. XM25 Airburst weapon. The XM25 was nicknamed the Punisher and promised to defeat enemies behind cover. In combat, However, it proved too heavy and mechanically fragile. Technical failures and safety concerns eventually shut the program down, ending what could have been a revolutionary weapon. The Sheridan tank was fast and airborne capable, but combat exposed serious flaws. Its missile-firing gun was unreliable and sometimes dangerous to its own crew. Armor protection was thin, and losses were high. Crews often described it as quick, but dangerously vulnerable. Korean War cold weather failures. During the Korean War, freezing temperatures revealed deadly weaknesses in U.S. weapons. Lubricants froze, bolts jammed, and rifles stopped functioning. Weapons that worked perfectly in training failed under real conditions, highlighting how environment can defeat even proven designs. M1911, early production, World War I. When the M1911 first entered World War I service, it wasn't yet the legendary sidearm history remembers. Early production batches were rushed to meet wartime demand, and quality control suffered as a result. Soldiers reported inconsistent machining, rough triggers, and feeding issues that could cause malfunctions under stress. Magazines varied in reliability, and poorly fitted parts sometimes failed after heavy use. While the design itself was sound, these early flaws damaged confidence among frontline troops. It wasn't until later refinements and standardized manufacturing that the M1911 earned its reputation as one of the most reliable pistols ever built. M9 Beretta, early Iraq and Afghanistan. The M9 Beretta entered combat in Iraq and Afghanistan as a modern replacement for the M1911, but early deployments exposed serious problems. Soldiers complained about weak stopping power from the 9mm round, especially in close combat. More concerning were reports of cracked slides and worn locking blocks after high round counts. Harsh desert environments accelerated wear, and oversized grips made the pistol difficult for many users to control. While later upgrades improved reliability, the early combat experience left many troops dissatisfied, reigniting debates over caliber and handgun effectiveness. A-12 Avenger II, canceled before combat. The A-12 Avenger II was supposed to be a stealth revolution for the U.S. Navy, a carrier-based bomber invisible to radar. Instead, it became one of the most expensive failures in U.S. military history. Weight problems plagued the design from the start, pushing the aircraft far beyond carrier limits. Radar-absorbing materials failed to meet performance goals, and flight systems never reached operational reliability. Costs spiraled out of control, timelines collapsed, and the aircraft never flew a single combat mission. The program was canceled outright, leaving behind lessons in overambition. MIM-14 Nike Hercules, combat ineffective role. The Nike Hercules missile was designed to destroy enemy bombers and even nuclear warheads during the Cold War. While technologically impressive, it was never suited for real combat conditions. The system required large fixed launch sites, making it vulnerable and immobile. Its long setup times and centralized radar control meant it couldn't respond flexibly to fast-moving threats. As warfare shifted toward low-altitude aircraft and missiles, Nike Hercules became strategically obsolete. Despite decades of service, it never proved itself in actual combat. Non-lethal riot agents. Vietnam War. In Vietnam, U.S. forces experimented with non-lethal riot control agents like tear gas to flush enemy fighters from tunnels and jungle cover. In theory, these agents would reduce casualties. In reality, dense vegetation and weather made them unpredictable. Gas often drifted back toward U.S. troops or dispersed too quickly to be effective. Enemy fighters adapted rapidly, using masks or simply waiting out exposure. Worse, the use of chemical agents damaged public perception of the war and raised serious ethical concerns, limiting their usefulness and effectiveness in real operations. Closing line. These failures prove one thing. Advanced technology means nothing if it can't survive real combat. In war, reliability isn't optional, it's everything.